Confucius's answer to the social and political disorder of his day was cultivating persons of virtue. He understood that the problems facing his society were too profound to be resolved by mere legislation or decree and the extensive policing of the populace. In his view, the evils confronting China were rooted in spiritual defilements, greed, hatred, the love of power, self-centeredness, and callousness towards human life. These dispositions were not aspects of life that could be controlled by the police. Talking about racism in the United States, Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "The ultimate solution to the race problem lies in the willingness of men to obey the unenforceable." What King observed about the defilement of racism coheres exactly with Confucius's view of the deep-rooted problems of his China. The only answer to such a situation is to convince others to obey the unenforceable. Confucius sought to do this by the way of virtue. We have already examined how the virtues Confucius considered most important would be embodied in the ideal individual, the one he called the gentleman. What remains to be discussed is how Confucius thought these virtues could be distilled or instilled and refined, and how the virtuous individuals could promote greater harmony within and among societies. These are the questions we will pursue in today's talk. I can't ever remember being instructed on how to be good when I was growing up. I was told to be good, and I was directed to perform certain good acts. I put little envelopes with a few nickels in the Sunday school offering plate. I trick-or-treated for UNICEF, and I tried not to steal or lie, with a few notable exceptions. But I did these things out of obligation or fear of being scolded or not wanting to disappoint my parents or to enjoy that rather delicious sanctimonious feeling. But I can't remember being given any advice on how to develop a sense of compassion or caring so that my good acts were prompted by genuine feelings and desires of humaneness. My lack of training in goodness left me assuming that becoming good would be a natural and effortless consequence of getting older, like I used to think about getting wise. It's only been relatively recently that I've come to believe that kindness and compassion are qualities that require cultivation. I have Confucius and the Buddha to thank for that awareness. Well, them and the observation that age has not brought an inevitable growth in kindness or wisdom. Perhaps I may have discovered that insight elsewhere, but for me, the message hit home through my reading of these sages. Both were convinced that discipline was the key to realizing and perfecting these qualities. They each proposed different methods for doing so, although at several significant points, their recommendations are similar. Of course, they advocated these disciplines for different reasons. The Buddha to achieve liberation from samsara, and Confucius to promote social harmony in this life. Yet viewed from a different angle, they shared the belief that self-discipline is necessary to bring forth the best that is within us. Master Kong never laid out anything as clear-cut as the Noble Eightfold Path for his disciples to follow. But he did set out some specific landmarks for guiding them along the path of virtue, which he called the Way, or Tao. These landmarks are scattered throughout the Analects, and like the elements of his life and philosophy, they have to be carefully culled from the text. Fortunately, a close reading highlights the basic practices that Confucius regarded as central to moral nurturance. A few sentences out of the first book of the Analects capture several of these practices in a single paragraph. A gentleman avoids seeking to satisfy his appetite to the full when he eats, and avoids seeking comfort when he is at home. He is diligent in deed and cautious in word, and he associates with possessors of the way and is put right by them. He may simply be said to be fond of learning. As in the teaching of the Buddha, there is an element of moderate asceticism in the life of the gentleman and the gentleman in training. He avoids eating too much and becoming too comfortable. As attested to by many a Thanksgiving dinner, indulging the appetite and dozing on the sofa dulls the senses and promotes lethargy. Not exactly the best conditions for reaching our human potential. Furthermore, conscious self-restraint helps encourage what is surely a major aspect of the practice of kindness, recognizing that it's really not all about me. Confucius called this subduing oneself. This passage also indicates that Confucian self-discipline requires awareness in word and deed. For this, the master advocated a form of meditation, what he variously called quiet sitting, abiding in reverence, and rectifying the mind. Like the Buddha and the Upanishadic sages, Confucius recognized the value of taking time to devote one's attention to thoughts and experiences. Such a practice not only sharpens the faculty of awareness, it also creates a space for critical self-examination. Confucius's own habit of self-examination is one of his traits that I admire most. His capacity to look at himself with ruthless honesty almost certainly contributed to at least two other worthy qualities: his openness to being corrected and taught by others, and his humility. These two traits are also related to one another. It takes a spirit of humbleness to be receptive to being corrected and taught. The most difficult students to teach are those who lack humility. Perhaps that is why he refused to teach someone who did not share his love of learning. Such humility is based on self-knowledge. Humility and self-knowledge may, in fact, be proportional to one another. There's an old adage from one of the Western religions, and I can't recall which at the moment, to the effect that the angels are more humble than humans because they are more intelligent than we are. And as I think about it, the saying may be just as true the other way around. The angels are more intelligent because they are more humble. Confucius seems to sum up the traits of the gentleman in the last sentence of the passage. He may simply be said to be fond of learning. Well, what sorts of things did Confucius think it important to learn? For the sage, devotion to learning meant especially the study of certain Chinese classics. The master himself spent an enormous amount of time studying the documents and chronicles of earlier periods, books on ritual, the I Ching, and the Book of Odes. Eventually, the most important of these writings were designated as the Wu Jing, or the Five Classics, and they became the first canon of Confucian writings. When Confucianism was later established as the basis of Chinese education, the Wu Jing formed the foundation of the curriculum. A thorough grounding in these texts was considered indispensable to a career in the government, which was regarded as the appropriate profession for a Confucian. Confucius also included